My name's Gregg Braden. I'd like to welcome you to this very special presentation of Missing Links, the deep truth of our origin, history, destiny, and fate. So it was in Tibet, and it was in the 2000s, in this case in 2008, where I had the opportunity to go to one of the most remote monasteries. It took 6 days out of Lhasa just to get to the monastery. And once we were there, the only way to get to the monastery was through the local mode of transportation, a yak, which is an amazing way to travel if you've never traveled by yak, up the mountain trail to the monastery. And it was in this place where I first encountered some of the nuns who I sensed were of advanced age, but I didn't know for sure. Because on the one hand, they looked like they might be, but on the other hand, they didn't look like elderly people that I had encountered in the West. Their skin was taut, it wasn't baggy and saggy, their eyes were bright and clear. They had teeth, they had hair, sometimes they shave their hair, especially the women, shave their hair for convenience, for hygiene, but it's still growing. And so it was in this particular monastery where I asked one particular woman, "How old are you?" And I asked because the Mother Superior was able to provide the papers. Now, this is one of those places in this program I cannot show you her face for security and to honor and respect her privacy and her safety. Okay, but I'm going to tell you about her, and then we are going to look at a couple of other examples where I can show you their faces, and you're going to see the same thing. But it was in this particular woman, it was the first time, this is my tip-off, my clue, that longevity is possible in ways that we simply don't embrace in the West. We discount it, we call it a hoax or we call it a fake. But it's like those out-of-place artifacts. So many examples of advanced age are cropping up in so many places of the world. The anomalies are now beginning to tell a story, and the story is very different from the story that you and I probably have been led to believe in the past. The Tibetan nun that I'm talking about right now, when we saw her papers, what we saw is the confirmed date of her birth was 1885, all right? And the year that I was with her was the year 2005. We went back again in 2008. My first contact with her was in 2005. 1885 to 2005, that means I was looking into the eyes of a woman who was 120 years old. She did not look like 120 years old. She lived in a single room. She walked to the river every morning, down a hillside to bring up the water. She grew a lot of her own food in the vessels and the vases that were available to her. Basil, tomatoes, herbs that she would eat every day in a very, very minimal diet. She was good, healthy, strong, and vital. And that told me that something is happening with her that maybe is happening with other people. Well, interestingly, I asked her what was her secret, and she looked at me through the translator and she said one word: compassion. She said, that's what we learn in these monasteries. That is the essence of our Buddhist teachings. It's all about compassion. We'll see in a moment why compassion would have an effect of longevity. Before we do that, I want to show you a couple of other cases because I want you to see this isn't an anomaly. It wasn't long after I met this Tibetan woman that the national media ran a story about a woman in the Palestinian territories. And you're seeing her face on the screen right now because she made national news. This was on the Associated Press. This woman, when you look at her, ask yourself how old you think she is, because here's her story. She went shopping one day. She hadn't been out for a while. She had to go through a military checkpoint that she didn't have to go through before, didn't exist before. They looked at her papers, they said, your papers are expired. You have to go to the authorities and get some new papers. And that's when she made headlines, because when they checked back through her records, they found that her date of birth was 1888. And the woman you're looking at, in the year 2008, she is 120 years old. Now, I'm not saying that she looks like she's in her 20s, but I think she looks really good for 120 years old. Her eyes are bright, her skin color is good, her teeth are good, she still has her hair. And I want to know, what is her secret? And she said the secret for her was the love that she had for her family, her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, her great-great-grandchildren. She said, they need me every day. What would they do without me? She said, I fix their meals. I help them with their schoolwork. I help them everything they're doing in their lives. I work in the garden so that I can prepare the food for them. She feels needed, and she loves her family, and she feels loved. That is a heart-based experience. All right? So that's two. And these are women, and I wanted to find an example that was of a male. And it was only through the research I was able to find what I'm about to share with you. And I'm sharing it with you. And I believe this is factual because it was documented by the military, and it was also documented in an article in Time magazine early in the 20th century. The man that you're looking at right now has a very interesting history. His name is Li Qingyuan. The image that you're seeing is a photograph that was taken of him in 1927 by the Chinese military. He was at the residence having a meal with an army general at the time. He was born in Sichuan, China. He spent the early part of his life as an herbalist. He was a high-altitude herbalist, and he was also a martial artist. So he lived in high elevation, thin air, a minimal diet of very specific kinds of herbs, and he learned about the energy of the human body through martial arts. He enlisted in the Chinese military at a relatively late age. He was 72 years old when he enlisted as a cartographer, and he is documented as enlisting in the Chinese military in the year 1749. Now, the Chinese keep meticulous records, and that's why I trust these records. 1749. He left the military, and he went back to his home in the mountains after he served as a cartographer at the age of 97. And 3 years later, the military records sent him a congratulations on his 100th birthday. That was the year 1777. They sent him another congratulations on his 150th birthday, and the records show this very clearly, in the year 1827. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. They sent him another congratulations for his 200th birthday in the year 1877. He died May 6th, 1933. His birth date, now the two different dates, he said that his birth date was later. He said he was only born in 1736. The military records, however, show that he was born in 1677. So either one of these is showing a man of tremendously advanced age. His age at death, was either 197 or 256. And this borders on what are called biblical ages. When he died, he was 7 feet tall. He had accomplished 14 marriages over 11 generations, and by some estimates had as many as 180 children that were attributed to his marriages. Time magazine wrote an article on him, on Li, and actually did an obituary May 15th, 1933. They acknowledged the validity of his longevity. And in this article, they asked, what was the secret to his long life? Before he had died, he had shared that secret. The secret, he said, was all about the heart. The secret was to keep a quiet heart. Now, this is not typical. I don't think it's the oldest, because the time that I have spent in Tibet, the monks and the nuns have told me that there are yogis that are much older. But I'm not sharing those with you here, and here's the reason why. I cannot document it. I cannot say to you factually, as a scientist, those yogis are actually 400 and 500 years old. And the truth is that the lives that I am told they live don't sound like very exciting lives. They live lives of ascetics, very little clothing, they don't move very much, they spend a lot of time in meditation, and they're strong and they're healthy, but they're not as engaged in everyday life. If I'm going to live 200, 300, 400 years old, I'd like to be very engaged in everyday life. From the time I was 5 years old, I told my mom that I would be in this world. I'd be on earth for 200 years. I'm on the 200-year plan. And while Mom used to laugh when I would tell her that, she later in life began to take it very seriously, and she would say that to me. When it came time to wish me happy birthday, she would say, I could wish you happy birthday. She said, but you're on the 200-year plan, so I have a lot more opportunities to do just this. The point is, can we live beyond this traditional 70 to 100 years? Would we want to? And a lot of times when I ask people if they want to, what they say to me is they don't want to, because to them, old age equates to suffering. Old age equates to the body breaking down and the things that they've seen in their lifetimes. And I want to say to you, right now, it doesn't have to be that way. The science is showing us this, and the indigenous traditions are telling us this. What was the common link between the three people of advanced age that we just talked about? The Palestinian woman, the Tibetan nun, and Lee. What was the common theme? And I gave it away already because I'm not good at keeping secrets. I gave it away. Each of them had a feeling. The Palestinian woman felt love for her family, and she felt that she was loved. The Tibetan nun felt the feeling of compassion. That's a heart-based experience. Lee said the secret was a quiet heart, feeling the feelings of calmness and serenity in his life. So the common thread for all of these, all of them are linked to a heart-based experience. And you say, well, why would a heart-based experience create this kind of longevity? And the answer to that is the secret to where we're going right now. It probably comes as no surprise that a heart-based experience would have some effect on our longevity. But the mechanism is what I want to talk to you about right now. Because what you have just learned in the last episode, the ability to harmonize your heart and your brain in a very precise way, in addition to all of the benefits that we've already shared, is the underlying trigger to unlock the potential of longevity and vitality, healthy longevity in your life. And it all begins, not surprisingly, with our DNA and the chromosomes that we have talked about earlier in this program. Each time our cells divide, something really, really interesting begins to happen, among the many interesting things that happen within the chromosomes themselves. In an earlier episode, I described how the tip of every chromosome, the DNA at the tip of every chromosome, has a special component called a telomere at the end. And I didn't talk a lot about those telomeres then because I knew I would right now. A telomere you can think of in just the way you would think of the shoelaces on your tennis shoes. Okay, if you look at the ends of the shoelaces on your tennis shoes, they typically have a little plastic cap over the end that keeps them from fraying and makes it possible for you to lace them through the eyes on your shoes. Well, the ends of your DNA, your telomeres, are the equivalent of those little plastic caps. And every time your cell divides, the chromosomes in the division process, they are incapable of completing division all the way to the end of the DNA. So what that means is, with each cell division, a little piece of the DNA breaks off. It's brittle, it breaks away, and it's lost. That is what the telomeres do. They are the buffer so that what breaks off is the telomere and not the information in the DNA itself. So, when one cell divides into two, you lose a little bit of telomeres in the end. That's okay, you've got a lot left. Two divided into four, you lose a little bit more. You've got a lot left, but not as much as you did before. And you see where this is going. It goes on and on for a finite period of time until we reach a point where the telomere is so short or it is so weak, it can no longer protect the rest of the DNA. And when your cell reaches that point, we call it senescence, we call it old age, and eventually we call it death. Because the cell cannot preserve the information, the DNA cannot preserve the information, and because of that, it won't allow itself to divide with bad information. All right, so that's the mechanism. Telomere shortening, it's directly linked to stress in our lives. And I want to say this to you directly. I'm going to read directly from the scientific document, so you know it's not my opinion. I want you to hear exactly what it is they're saying about this. In the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the title of this research article, it tells the whole story. Listen to the title. Accelerated telomere shortening in response to life stress. What they're saying is chronic stress erodes the telomeres, it impairs the DNA replication, and it accelerates the aging. So this is peer-reviewed science saying in open paper what we're talking about right now. It is the stress of life. It can come from many places. It can come from the job, it can come from work, it can be emotional stress, it can be environmental stress, it can be psychological stress, it can be a healing crisis. There are all kinds of stress. So it's not the stress, it's about how we interpret and how we deal with that stress. When we are born, we have a very high complement of telomeres. What scientists tell us is when we're born, we have about 8,000 base pairs of telomeres to begin with. By the time we're in our 30s, we have maybe half of that number, and by the time we're in our 60s, we have maybe about a third of that number, typically. But the good news is all that can change, and you can direct how it changes in your life. The lifetime of a telomere and the lifetime of a cell are generally accepted to be about 40 to 60 cell divisions. So 40 to 60 cell divisions is generally the lifetime of an average cell, and this is what scientists tell us. It is the limit of that lifetime. And the limit actually has a name. It's named after the man that discovered the limit. It is called the Hayflick limit. Hayflick limit. That is the number of times. The Hayflick limit defines how many times our cells can divide before they reach the point where the telomeres aren't working any longer. Interestingly, that Hayflick limit equates, if you take that number of cell divisions and how long they live, that equates to about 120 years of human life. So we're beginning to see why we do see people living up to 120 years. We don't see a lot after that because they have reached this Hayflick limit. The question is, can we increase that Hayflick limit? Are we bound to that limit? And the answer is yes, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. And the discovery in 2009 tells us why it's possible. In 2009, the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology was awarded to three people, to Carol Greider, Elizabeth Blackburn, and Jack Szostak. They all worked together to discover an enzyme in the human body. Now think about this. This is 2009. That was just a few years ago. And they're still discovering things about the human body that we haven't known in the past. This new enzyme was mysterious at first. They found the enzyme. They weren't sure what the function was. But the only place they found the enzyme was hovering near the end of the telomeres. So they theorized maybe this enzyme has something to do with the telomeres, and if it does, maybe the enzyme has something to do with long life. So their discovery of this enzyme is what the Nobel Prize was awarded for. The name of the enzyme tells the whole story. It gives it away. Okay, the telomeres are what determine how long the cell can live and divide. The enzyme they discovered is called telomerase. And the purpose of this enzyme, the only purpose of the telomerase in our bodies, is to heal and repair the telomeres at the end of our DNA. The thing is, often our telomerase is not actively engaged in its greatest potential. It's dormant, or if not completely dormant, it is not as active as it can be. Well, what scientists found after they discovered the telomeres, they began looking into the function of the telomeres and the telomerase working together. And once again, not my words, I want to share with you the exact words of what it is that they found. The National Institutes of Health produced a series of articles in the year 2011. And I'm just going to share with you two direct sentences from that. Number one, they're saying that the telomeres shorten with age. They say telomere length shortens with age. That is a fact. Okay, the next sentence is the key, because they say the rate of telomere shortening can be either increased or decreased by specific lifestyle factors. What that means is that you and I have the ability to make choices in our lives that will either accelerate the aging process, senescence, old age and death, or we make lifestyle choices that breathe life and activate these anti-aging hormones and the telomerase in our bodies. And some of these factors you already know. Of course, diet, exercise, lifestyle, you know about those things. But there's another factor now that you already know, but you may not realize is impacting the duration of your cell life. And that is the technique of heart-brain harmony that we just learned in the last episode. Because that technique of heart-brain harmony, as you activate that in your life, what it's doing is it's setting up the communication between your heart and your brain, and your breathing is telling your body that you're in a place that's safe, and that is redefining any stress that you may feel in your body. Remember, stress is one of the key factors to decreasing the length of the telomeres. So it's not just about meditating, and it's not just about saying a chant, although those things can help, but it's about creating this environment in our advanced and extended neural network that signals to our bodies that we are in a safe place where it is okay to put all the energy into the body, into the healing, the regeneration, and rejuvenation, rather than sending that energy in defense of the world around us through the stress of cortisol and adrenaline. I know it's a big idea. The bottom line is heart-brain harmony is a trigger for longevity. And what you're seeing on your screen right now, I didn't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to see this. You're looking at telomeres. These are photomicrographs of telomeres. I'm going to show you a before and after. This is a photograph of telomeres that are of advanced age. There aren't many of them left. They are the little pink areas that you're seeing. You're looking down at the end of a strand of DNA. Okay, and this is through the aging process. Now, the next image that you see is going to be precisely the same telomeres. However, the telomerase has been activated. And when it's activated, it will heal and reverse the aging process. And now you're seeing it right here. Look at this. That is the same telomere that now is rejuvenated. What you're seeing is anti-aging. You're seeing it real time in the DNA, and this is human DNA. What's possible in this slide is possible in your body. So modern science is now revealing, it's solving one of the deepest mysteries of the greatest truths of human existence. We are literally wired, and let me be personal, you are wired to thrive in life and to begin healing of your body. You begin the moment that you're born, and you can embrace that at any time in your life. In our next episode, we're going to take this idea of personal healing to an even deeper level with a bigger picture. And in doing so, we'll discover that the leading edge science that tells us our personal choices are the key to global cooperation and peace are available to us in our lives right now. Thank you for joining me for this program, and be sure to tune in for our next all-new episode, Missing Links, the deep truth of our origin, history, destiny, and fate.